just because someone has attacked your country, you've been the victim of terrorism, but do you give up your principle and your constitutional rights? And that's what he's doing. He's upholding, in some ways, whether or not, whether we agree or not as a public, he's upholding the constitutional rights of these people who have been incarcerated. That said, there is a greater question of whether or not these people should be given constitutional rights in the first place.
He won the case in Supreme Court, but Keep America Safe is a group of the conservative and rightists, and they're saying, no, this group should be removed because you would not want mob lawyers to be in charge of mob, or drug lawyers who defend the drug lords to be in charge of the drug Department of Justice. So maybe they have a point. But at the same time, Obama administration should have known you don't appoint all 7 of them in Department of Justice. You can spread them around.
Well, it'll be curious. He's an interesting person in that, he made I guess you could say, a controversial choice as an attorney to defend who he was defending, and whether there will be long-term political consequences because of that, or perhaps maybe it's the making of his career because of something like this. It's hard to say, how it'll all play out in the long run.
And you know why and who takes these kind of cases? Because he was a professor at the Georgetown University. He's a law professor.
See?
So, with...
Maybe it was a challenge.
Yes. The students and the others, you get together and you do these things.
This was the big week anticipated for Apple's new iPad.
Yes.
Of course, the iPad made quite a splash. And it was the usual thing with those Apple stores and people's lined up outside. They sold over 300,000 iPads in their first day.
That's right.
Which is phenomenal, because if you think about the iPhone, it actually had a slow trajectory up. And I read a very interesting article. As of course, I'm a big fan of Time magazine, and they actually put Steve Jobs right on the cover, because he has revolutionized basically technology, and Apple, of course, has resurged because of him. But they haven't done anything new or tremendously radical. It's not as if the tablet PC hasn't been around before. It just hasn't been successful before. And reading through this article, it just struck me. You think about Sony as a brand. Sony Walkmans back in the 80s, they owned that market as far as portable music media and devices. Apple really, conquered that market out from under Sony just by having a more aesthetically pleasing device. They went for the coolness factor, yes, and they won. But isn't it funny, if you think about the technology arena, you've got Google, you've got Apple, and let's just use Sony as an example. Each one of those is going after their own unique niche in the next several years. It's fascinating to me. For example, you've got iPhone and the iPad, and Apple going after basically ordinary people and their mobile device needs, and they're doing very well at it. Sony is banking on something else entirely different. They are going after 3D televisions. In fact, they're trying to resurge back on the television market. Remember, they left TVs to go into music. Now they're coming back to TVs.
Yeah.
Very interesting. But they want a 3D TV in everybody's home. Not just that, but you've seen those digital photo frames?
Yes.
They're even trying to get you to put your family pictures on a 3D photo frame. Think about it.
Yeah.
Pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
And then finally, there's Google. Google, of course, has been in the news lately because of their turmoil and their skirmish with the Chinese government. But did you know Google, famous for sponsoring contests, has sponsored another contest? They basically have challenged a city, American cities, several of them are competing for this, to build the first high-speed, totally fiber optic network, which Google says will be 100 times faster than what we're used to. So think about, just your Wi-Fi being at Starbucks and being able to...
So they're going to be in that space.
They're basically going to test market it in a city by building this network and letting a city be its test user audience to collect data and to improve the service. But think about it. You're looking at Google basically taking over internet. You're looking at Sony taking over television and media, and you're looking at Apple taking over this space, and you've got, of course, BlackBerry and so forth. So all these technology players have figured out what their niche is, and they're going after it hard. It should be very fun to watch over the next several years. What happens?
I think I see a lot of roadkill out there. You got Amazon.com's Kindle. What happens to Kindle now that iPad looks much better and it's in color, whereas Kindle is black and white? So it's a roadkill, I guess,
Well, that's one of the interesting things that happens is, the Kindle had its market window for about a year, and that was basically up until the point where the iPad came out, and of course now there will be some serious competition, but you don't know. I mean, Kindle has some advantages over the iPad, and they could go for the price value instead of the coolness factor. You just never know.
But the tablet can do almost anything, including make phone calls, go on the internet, read your email, read books, magazines. Almost anything can be done. The only problem is it does not fit in your pocket.
It doesn't, but people who use the iPhone and have converted to the iPad say it's so much better an experience because it's hard to surf on the iPhone at the end of the day.
But you still need two hands. You still need to be sitting somewhere working on it. You can't be walking and doing it. That's the disadvantage. Moving on, folks. In California, the medicinal marijuana rules came out, and they have appointed 13 dispensaries and so many people that can grow marijuana. So there is an Indian gentleman by the name of Dharman. He has almost conquered that market. He began with a project called ThinkingPot.com. That was a 420 social network for marijuana.